Welcome in to the MPW Digital Postgame Show presented by Dead Soxy. I'm Chase Parham here with you for the next little while. As you can see, Jeffrey Wright already in the screen there. We'll get to him in 1 second. This will be up in podcast form right after the show ends as well. The all MPW Digital podcast presented by Twisted Tea. But Ole Miss survives, knocks off Texas A&M 38-35 in Oxford today. A dominant defensive first half turns into a bit of a shootout there in the second half. Texas A&M missing a field goal that was partially blocked by, I think, Aaron Harris there at the end, as Ole Miss, again, 8-1 on the season. They get the game that we've been hesitant but also talking about for several weeks now at Georgia next week. Rebels 8-1 headed to Athens, and we'll discuss biggest game since, talk about what it means, what it doesn't mean, and more coming up. So a lot of reaction on this third straight win over Texas A&M, and then also what's ahead for the Rebels against Georgia next week. Before we do that, Dead Soxy, we appreciate them every week. If you want to elevate your game day look in socks, financially support the Rebels, every step you take shapes the future of Ole Miss athletics. Sign up for a sock subscription. Get the exclusive Juice Kiffin sock for free. It's right there on the screen if you're here with us. Visit deadsoxy.com. Choose a subscription to receive the latest in Ole Miss styles every month or at an interval that best suits you. Take the next step, upgrade your socks, elevate Ole Miss, and as always, stay Soxy. Jeffrey, ton to get to here. Just curious, I assume you were watching with the missus. What was her reaction as A&M is going down to score there?
She acted as if she was watching the game, and then she went into the kitchen because where our kitchen is, you can't see the TVs. So she had completely over there, but she claimed to her parents that she did indeed watch. However, saw nothing because she couldn't. She went for a walk during the entire second half.
Oh, really?
For I would say like a good 45-minute walk. She wants it to be known that she walked with our daughters. Like, she's acting like it was a parenting move. No, she was like literally, she could not watch the game.
Yeah, I will get to a couple reactions after this on rebelgrove.com. Just heads up, everybody. Obviously, when the game ends like that, I have no ability to put that in any kind of context quick enough to get the show started. So I will do that, especially with the 11 a.m. game right after this. But, I mean, so many different places here. Again, though, Jeffrey, let's go here. 8-1, they get to the place that we were talking about was possible. Georgia next week, and another win where they showed tons of perseverance, tons of ways that, they get out to this big lead. They had this 14-point swing after the holding penalties and the officiating and all that stuff, and A&M takes the lead in the second half, and it's again a game where I've seen so many Ole Miss teams right there go, hey, hell of an effort, but just wasn't to be today, and you grab your lunch pail and you head off to the locker room, and it's an L in some way. And they fought back. They got the score. They drive right down. They do it, if anything, too fast. Then you get on defense. You make a stop. You force the field goal. You should have picked the ball off twice during that. You got unlucky on Max Johnson fumbling. So many things there. But they just, again, find ways to win in a team that, it is completely their identity against a team that it is completely the opposite of their identity in Texas A&M.
Yeah, I mean, the first thought that I had was like, holy hell, I just need to because that felt like it was like 5 different games in one. I just look at my notepad and early, feels like maybe 20 points could win the game. Like the way that it was going, it didn't feel like everyone, it was tougher to move the ball. And so I was like, man, maybe this could be like one of those slog type games. Then Ole Miss gets the big drive where I honestly, I know people are going to do the whole officiating thing. I think Ole Miss got away on the fourth down. Jackson had a false start. They got away with that. Then they get the great throw to set up the touchdown. And then I think they had a good scheme play to formation, and Judkins made a good cut, and it was 7-0. And then Texas A&M started false starting, and kind of the key thing that I was writing down was I was always a little worried about Ole Miss only because they weren't getting pressure. And when Johnson has struggled, we saw today, it's like when he was pressure, he looked pretty vulnerable. But, you keep coming back to it. It's like the game gets away from them. They can't stop the run. the first the drive where let's see, the drive where Ole Miss gets the ball with 12:04 in the fourth quarter. I think A&M's just cut it to 3, and I was like, feels like Ole Miss needs a touchdown, because it felt like at that point that was the type of drive where I don't know how many more stops Ole Miss was going to get, and they go 3 and out. The first down run to Bentley, where I think if the guy misses, Bentley might have had, I don't know, a 50, 60-yard game. Mm-hmm. There was nobody on that side of the field. Then they have the run for no gain, and then the incompletion on the slant, I think, to Watkins. And they go 3 and out. And then just like that, A&M goes back, and A&M's going to score a touchdown. And I get griping about that catch. I think it was a catch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think some of the reviews were a little quick. I didn't think they got reviews wrong. And the thing that I actually like about this team is, like, I don't feel like we've had a game where the calls impacted how Ole Miss played. They just kept playing, and they went and finding ways to make plays. And the biggest story to me of today is Ole Miss. Like, it's kind of like what we talked about last week when you were talking about this game. Like, we kind of set it up. It's like, we didn't know how spot we were going to be, but like, this game came down to the last drive, honestly, for each team, and Ole Miss made more plays on the offensive drive and plays on the defensive drive. And so we're setting up. I mean, I don't know. What was the stat? When's the last time they won? It feels like it has to be before integration. When's the last time they were 8-1? I mean, before integration?
I would assume the 60s without looking it up. Yeah, I mean, my guess would be 1963 or 62, but that is simply a guess that I haven't gotten there yet. By the way, as you're talking, Arkansas knocks off Florida 39-36 in OT. I actually got one right this week. The Hogs go into Gainesville. They go up 14-0 in the first 3 minutes, and they get an interesting game against Auburn next week. We got plenty of time to talk about that. I'm not doing it right now, but Hogs and Tigers. Quick way to get to this, because I'm setting up some stuff with, as I say this, Trey Harris today, 11, 213, a touchdown, 15 targets. He had 55 after the catch. He had multiple one-hand catches. He was a complete beast. It's a complete mismatch there on the outside for Ole Miss. Put it together in a way that was, actually 8-1 last year. Daniel, you're right. They went 8-1 and then lost to A&M, and they didn't. They lost the next week and didn't win again. A&M was their final win to get to 8-1.
Okay.
So 2 years in a row. Sorry. Yes, you're correct about that.
I think we can agree. These 8-1s feel very different.
Yeah, I mean, look. Here's what Ole Miss did today: is barring some crazy collapse in Starkville, you've got an access bowl. You're 10-2, and you're about to head to an access bowl at worst. You get your opportunity next week. We'll get all to that, but no, I mean that's what this game was huge on a number of levels to get a win, to get the win that was getting you to the thing that matters the most. It's funny because what we've watched, and I get that this is not. I mean, I understand all these things aren't connected, but it's kind of like I said a second ago. We see Ole Miss in the past, and today was a great microcosm of just sort of where they've come as an athletic program, because I was there for the first half, as I always am, and I'll leave at halftime and get here to start setting up and working at things. The crowd was great for an 11 a.m. game. The environment is really good. They do so many things better, as we talked about last week, from a game ops standpoint, and they just continue to find ways to win games, and they get to the game that matters. It feels like Ole Miss in every sport for so long, they would lose the one to get to the one that matters. You know what I mean, Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like the game before, you go, hey, if they just get past Arkansas, then you got this LSU game. Or if you just get past this team, you get this thing. Or, a completely different sport. But basketball always in those preseason tournaments is, hey, Syracuse is right there if they just beat Elon. And then you lose to Elon and do all those things. This is a different environment. It's a different area. It's so many things where
you can get to the Sweet 16 if you just get past LaSalle.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's my point. That's completely what I'm saying. Is like it's that deal where you look up and go, no, they came out, they asserted themselves early. They were by far the better team in the first half. I mean, they were it was very unfortunate, frankly, they weren't up 3-4 touchdowns and just sort of put them away. They let A&M get off the mat, and then they just kept responding. And as I said, Trey Harris goes over 200 bills there. Jackson Dart, he finishes 24 of 33 for 387. Talk to me a little bit about the pass game today.
Yeah, I mean I feel like the other thing I kept writing on my notepad was Trey Harris with like a star. Trey Harris, Trey Harris, Trey Harris, Trey Harris. I mean, to me today was the Trey Harris game offensively because I feel like that's the first time we've seen him this year where he looked explosive. We've seen him make really tough catches and make big plays, but today looked like he had a gear that I don't feel like we've seen from him for a while. And they honestly needed it. I mean, you could tell early the running game was going to be dependent on how much could they throw it. If they could throw it and they could get some light boxes, they'd be able to run it. But if they were going to try to establish the run early, it was going to be tough. And A&M, essentially, the way they played them, they played a lot of man, and they basically dared Ole Miss to throw the football on him, and he made them pay time after time. I mean, even the incompletions to him were still impressive. Like the one-handed grab in the end zone, I mean, they just had no answer for him. And like whenever you get into a 38-35 game, saying like one player's the difference is probably misguided. But I don't know if Ole Miss is in that game without him because I don't think they had anyone else that commanded the amount of respect that he did.
Well, I mean, even on one of their scoring drives there as they were trying to come back and keep pace when A&M went on the run, he caught the ball on that really contested catch down the left sidelines on sort of that corner wheel thing. And when that happened, he thought, hey, that's not one we're going to put into the stat book and go, wow, it's not as big as that one-handed catch. But it was just as important at the time to keep it going, keep the drive going and moving because, Dart has this career-like day as far as throwing for 387 and a couple touchdowns. But you look at how it was divvied, and again, Harris was more than 50% of his yards, kind of well more, because Jordan Watkins goes 5 for 47, Wade was 4 for 80, Prescorn 2 for 33, Judkins 1 catch 10 yards, Bentley 1 catch 4 yards, and then Hudson Wolf had a target but no catch. Every time there needed to be a play, it was Harris, and he was going up, manipulating and dominating some defensive back in the process. I mean, he just had one of those days. They did end up getting Judkins over 100 yards. He goes 23 for 102, 3 touchdowns on his day, scoring 3 times, averaging 4.4. Bentley, less of a factor than usual, 6 carries, 19 yards. I told Neil, Judkins, because he's so straight ahead and he's so physical, did a great job against that A&M front. He found lanes. He showed good vision in a very pro way today. Bentley typically gets by with his patience, but A&M was good enough and so fast enough up front that the patience was actually a bad thing. You just had to kind of pick a hole and hit it and hope it worked out. You couldn't take that extra step against that defense.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, that was kind of another note that I was like, because I do agree with you. For the most part, Bentley, I think, has been more effective for them this year. But today I put, like, this has to be a Judkins day. Like, you could just tell it was a lot of hit the hole and go. And that was another big thing. Also, was it Harris who caught the first that first drive where Ole Miss scores? Was it Harris that caught the kind of the wheel route into coverage?
I don't remember the play. I'll just be honest.
I'm trying. Let's see. Where's the? Yes, Trey Harris. I gave us that. It was the Trey. It was a 39-yarder to Trey Harris, kind of like up the seam, and the safety came over and he caught it in between the corner and the safety. I mean, that was really just kind of. It was a Trey Harris day. I mean, they needed somebody to make big plays one-on-one because we talked about it. Like with A&M's defense, they're very good up front. They're good kind of front seven. And I just felt like the other thing I kept writing down was like, how would Ole Miss respond? How would A&M respond? And I felt like the only time where I wrote down how would Ole Miss respond, whether it was after giving up the blocked field goal for a touchdown, they immediately respond, they get a touchdown there. It felt like every time that I was writing down how would Ole Miss respond, they usually responded. The only time it wasn't was that 1 3 and out. But after that, A&M takes their first lead, Ole Miss, and then, to me, like that was kind of the story of the game. It's whenever you asked how would Ole Miss respond or how would A&M respond, Ole Miss responded more times than A&M did. And that's the difference in a 3-point game.
That drive where A&M goes, Ole Miss goes down and gets points after that swing there, after the blocked field goal, after the touchdown, because for the guys that are, or whoever was at the game, you'll understand this. If you weren't there, it's hard to really describe it. The energy loss that would be expected on a play like that when that happened, because you have to look at what was going on at that point. Ole Miss had been dominating that game to such a degree that you're talking about, hey, go down, score, go up 3 scores right here, sort of put them away at that point. You get into a different kind of game. The crowd is going crazy. A&M's body language is bad. You got Jimbo throwing stuff on the sidelines. I mean, it was 98-2 as far as where momentum was going in one direction. And crowd goes quiet. A&M gets kind of puffed up. There's an entire, almost like baseball giving up a home run to reverse things, sea change with that one play right there. And when that happened, it took Dart and that drive getting down there to kind of breathe some life and go, okay. And I think this was an emotion game, a momentum game in a lot of ways from that standpoint. Because, look, I mean, even Ole Miss got some lift out of the stupid defensive lineman for A&M hitting Pettis in the balls there. There were several different ways where you went, hey, use that in a positive way, and Ole Miss did a really good job of doing that today.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree, because like the halftime, like you're asking yourself this question of, you felt like Ole Miss controlled the game, yet you looked at the scoreboard and it was a 6-point game. Mm-hmm. And so you're wondering, does that mean something bad for Ole Miss? Does that mean something good for Ole Miss? Like, you're trying to kind of weigh it. I think in the end, it really just didn't really bode well one way or the other. Like, I think A&M started figuring out, hey, they're going to have a tough time stopping stretch play. Like, the stretch run play was really tough for Ole Miss to stop. Like, you got everybody moving one way, they'd cut it back. And I credit A&M's offensive line, who's been maligned all year. I thought they played extremely well. And so then it just kind of became, all right, you could kind of sense at the end it was going to come down to, like, who's making plays in the end? Who makes game-deciding plays? And Ole Miss made way more game-deciding plays today. And I think the other big thing for me was, I don't think Max Johnson played poorly, but I just had so much more faith in Jackson than I did Max Johnson. Like, I felt like A&M was scoring, not necessarily ahead of Johnson, but like Johnson was along for the ride for A&M to score. Like, he did enough. Like, whereas with Dart, I thought Dart was making throws that keeping the thing going.
I thought Dart made as many good decisions and throws as he has in any game in his career almost today. Considering who they're playing, what the talent levels were, everything about that, where he had to go get it. He had to. Every drive felt meaningful in some way. It was almost kind of like a football version of playoff baseball a little bit, where you just felt like every sequence was changing momentum one way or the other. And I thought Dart was excellent. I mean, he really did. He made perfect decisions most of the day. He was incredibly locked in for the first 2.5 quarters there when they was kind of really rolling. And Ole Miss won a game where Texas A&M entered the day number 1 in the SEC in total defense. And Ole Miss won a game where, starting with the final drive of the second half, Texas A&M's drive chart, touchdown, interception, but a great drive, and then Max Johnson makes that pathetic throw that gets picked off there in the end zone that was absolutely the turning point of the game since Ole Miss won the game. Because, had A&M won, the 14-point swing in the first half would have been the play of the game, but that was the play of the game for Ole Miss to get out of that and kind of catch their breath back, even though they didn't immediately capitalize off of it. And then touchdown, and then field goal attempt. That's it. Those were A&M's drives from the end of the second quarter, and it's an A&M team that found some rhythm for the first time in the second half in a long time. A&M had not scored a second-half touchdown since September the 23rd against Auburn. They'd gone several games without scoring in the second half. They clearly found some things with some adjustments. Golding and the Ole Miss defense had a really hard time adjusting back to that. They were on the field a lot. I thought they got tired. I thought they had some issues in that standpoint. And all those things go as they do, and yet you look up and it's Ole Miss 38-35 over A&M.
Yeah, I mean, I think another key distinction, when you get into these types of games where one play here, one play there, this game could go either way, oftentimes go look at how teams finish drives. Ole Miss had 5 red zone attempts, and they get 32 points. A&M had 5 red zone attempts, they get 21. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what it really boils down to, is like, in a game where there really wasn't much distinction, because there are runs where you can say Ole Miss was clearly the better team. There were runs where I thought you could say A&M was clearly the physically better team. So overall, it ended up being a pretty even game. And that's kind of been the story for this team all year. When it comes down to like finishing drives or when they got to have it, they find themselves making way more plays than the team does. And, I take my hats off to them because it's been impressive because I kept wondering, like, if they keep playing these, they're not truly coin flip games, but it feels like they're playing these, because we talked about it, a lot of close games. Does the law of averages work against them? And one time they're just going to find themselves on the wrong end of it. And I started to think kind of late in the fourth quarter, today might be that day.
I wrote that down at one point there with a couple drives to go as I was making notes.
And all the credit in the world. Like, they didn't. Like, because I really did kind of think, this might be that day where it just kind of evens out. But, I mean, whether it's Dart hanging tough, making big throws, or it was Trey Harris dominating, making plays on the football, whether it was Judkins running the ball hard in between the tackles, like whether it's, getting pressure on Max Johnson to make him get the ball out of his hands probably before he wants to, or if it's getting, I don't know, a finger on the – clearly they got a hand on the field goal.
It was Xavier Harris. He did touch it. Yeah.
Like they just the way that it came off, it's like, okay, that clearly got tipped. But that's kind of the difference between winning and losing when you got a game that's that close.
Georgia has taken the lead. Carson Beck throws it to Lovett. He goes in from about 6 yards out, 10-7 Bulldogs. I mean, that's the funny part of the conversation we're having is that it is just 10-7. Georgia's got to now win to set up the game that we're all going to be talking about here moving ahead, which I think they will. I think they're going to beat Missouri today. They're in Athens, back-to-back games in Athens for them that are huge, and they get the what will definitely be top 10 Rebels next week. No, I mean, look, sure, coin flip things happen when you play a bunch of close games. I mean, if you play enough, you're going to lose, that's very true. But when you have a mentality and a mindset and a chemistry that does well in those type of pressure situations, you are going to win more than a team who doesn't. And again, A&M didn't do anything necessarily stupid beyond that one Johnson throw. I mean, this was not one of those A&M games where you went, oh my God, they look like raw hell, and what are they doing, and how does that even work? I mean, I thought they played relatively well and pretty good football today. They just sort of got beat. They just didn't make enough plays. They weren't as good at the quarterback position as you mentioned with Dart. I mean, that's the thing where Ole Miss was hit with a different level of adversity because you're at home and you're playing for bigger things, and there's so much more pressure on you. There's no pressure on A&M right now. I mean, there is pressure on Jimbo. There's not pressure on that roster. Those are two completely different things. They're not playing for playoffs. They're not playing for the Sugar Bowl. They're not playing for the West. They're not really playing for anything. They're just kind of gutting it out and seeing what happens around them as it's sort of crazy. So I think while yes, and I guess I'm admiring and admitting and agreeing with what you're saying, it evens out, but it doesn't when you have such a difference on a situation on what you're doing and how you're handling those situations. Yes, flipping Reb, the Kiffin Jimbo handshake where Jimbo acted like he didn't see him before the game was incredibly classic stuff.
But I'm all for
that was
it.
great.
Like I think we are. Like, I'm not willing to say like the whole Saban dynasty, Bama dead, whatnot. But what I do think we are clearly exiting away from is the Sabanization of college football, where it's all buttoned up. It's everything's on message. We're now getting into like cut a promo. Like, it's the WWE era of college football, which is way more fun, way more entertaining. You got these, I hate to say it, guys, these Matt Rule clips that are coming out, like these speeches before the game, they're awesome. Like, but like we're getting guys cutting promos. I hate Ryan Day, but like, hey, like it's content. Like it's way more interesting. It's way more fun. And I mean, yeah, like Jimbo doing the whole, oh, hey, didn't see you there. Like, hey, how you doing? Like, like I'm in for that. Like, that's great. And then you had, I don't know when you got to TV, one of the mics was around an A&M fan. Because, like, about every third play, you keep hearing, like, this guy in the background go, Blake Kiffin's a douchebag. And it's like,
oh, really?
Like, you could hear it. You could hear it on the, like, the kind of like the background noise. So I'm all for this. But, like, back to your point on Johnson, I mean, I'm dead serious. Like, that's one of the worst throws I've ever, like, in terms of decision, time, and, like, it was first down, wasn't it? Wasn't it first and goal?
It was first or second. I'm not sure.
Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that throw was so bad. But that's kind of the difference. Like, hey, you got into one of those games, and Jackson didn't have a throw like that. Like, and in the end, like, that might be the difference between winning and losing. And you are 100% right. Like, A&M's finally in this role where they can kind of play spoiler, and they're a pretty threatening spoiler because, God, I don't know if I buy into the whole, like, Lane, like, there's, that's an NFL roster. Like, he was building them up, but that is one of the 4 most talented rosters in the league, like, no question.
That is A&M's 4th loss. They are now 5-4 on the season. They still got LSU to go for sure. I don't know who else is on this thing, but I know LSU is.
I think they get State next week.
Ooh, they'll beat State. What is Will Rogers' availability?
I have no idea. Are they like he's hurt? Because clearly Arnett, like Rogers is not an Arnett quarterback. Like he just wants, like basically Arnett just wants to run the option. Like he should just come out and say like he wants to be a service academy. He wants his offense to just hold the ball so that his defense can bow up. It's like, good luck to you, buddy.
Missouri is winning some 1-on-1s in the past game against Georgia so far.
More than I expected him to.
I mean, they really are. I mean, it's like right there. No, look, it's yeah. I mean, somebody says it there. I mean, yeah. I think at this point, college football just expects Ole Miss to win a lot of games. I mean, last year appears to be the aberration because of all the stuff that was going on, different things. Now it's season to season because of portal, but yeah, I mean, like, again, they're a win over State. If nothing else, from another Access Bowl, that would be 2 and 3 years. And I mentioned the home environment, and this is just more about playing well than anything else. But A&M did have some motion penalties. They had to call timeouts because of the crowd today. They were impacted in multiple ways by the crowd. I don't know that I would have predicted an Ole Miss stretch at any point of me since I started covering the team in 2006 that I would go, hey, Ole Miss is going to be 20-2 in home games. And they are. They've won 20 of their last 22. I mean, it is a phenomenal stat of playing well at home, holding serve. And then what Lane Kiffin, outside of a couple of weird things last year, has done is he just beats the teams he's supposed to beat. He is really good at week to week on just taking care of that game and moving on against inferior opponents.
Yeah, I do think we need to be careful to act like, I think far too often fan bases think like all of a sudden has been raised. Mm-hmm. I do agree that he's raised the floor, and I think he's probably raised the ceiling. Like, I think he's raised the floor of Ole Miss by a full win, and I think he's probably raised the ceiling by a full win. But I do think some of this is relative. Like I also think like there's going to be situations where you're going to have years where you kind of have to reset and psych. Like, I just don't think this is going to be like all of a sudden you've got this established program. Like, I think it is going to ebb and flow a little bit, but there's no question, like, where Ole Miss also deserves credit is I think they have wildly improved the in-game environment. Like, it seems like there's real atmosphere there. It seems like it's louder to me. Like, I don't know if that's more fans getting into it or if it's more because, I mean, that the stadiums looked like this for 4 years, 5 years. When did they finally finish that?
Yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was still there when they finished the end zone. So, like, it's not like – but it seems like it's demonstrably louder. But, I mean, kind of the thing, like, when we talk about, like, how has Kiffin done it, it's kind of the story of this team this year. Like, they haven't beaten themselves. Their one loss was a game where I thought they physically got beat. Other than that, they've either made more plays to win the game or they have let other teams beat themselves by just being mature. And I think that's what's interesting was, did he make a conscious decision in the portal this year to go older and more experienced rather than just pure talent? Because it does seem like that is part of the story for Ole Miss is the maturity level, despite the fact that, okay, all these guys haven't played with each other. Like, it's not like this is a group that's played together for 4 years and now they're getting ready to make their run. But there's a calamity, there's a maturity about them. And there is, I mean, I know people kind of roll their eyes, but like there's a business-like pro approach to it. I just don't sense week to week any like I know I've mentioned on Thursday, but like they don't ride the Hugh waves, the Houston Nut, get them up, like like this team's just kind of there every week.
Yeah, I mean, what it does is it takes out that weird game. Like, I know they've had bad halves and stuff, but
sure,
Kiffin has been able to avoid the thing where you never go into it and go, God, are they going to have the Hugh Memphis game? Are they going to have the Vanderbilt game where Vanderbilt does something dumb and beats Ole Miss? I mean, he just handles those things by keeping them level in such a ways. And yes, you're exactly right. And they're talking about it in the stream here. I think it's very relevant to next year because that's a valid thing. This was supposed to be a year that Ole Miss won 8, maybe 9 in a perfect world. Some people talked about 7 because 7.5 was the Vegas over/under. 8's where most people fell for, and they're there right now even without State and ULM. So they're clearly going to go over from that standpoint. Next year was going to be hey, Judkins is a junior. Dart probably comes back. He's this, playoffs, first year. Can they get in the top 12? And they definitely went portal older. He's talked about taking a free agent NFL stance to it of, hey, the older guys that are more mature, hey, I've got more film, I've got more sample size, I understand what they did, even if they were lower levels or other places. They've shown over multiple seasons that they really understand. Jeffrey will be back in a second. He kind of fell through. His internet was not great, so hopefully it's a little better when he comes back. Yeah, Luke, I wasn't saying 7 was acceptable. I'm just saying people predicted that was possible when you looked at the schedule. But no, Lane 100% picked maturity, older. He had larger sample sizes, and they reconstructed that defense with Pete in that vein of, hey, we're going to have guys that show up. Because here's the thing, too, is when you do that, you lessen the chance of the cancers in your locker room. You've got with these guys who have been around college football for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, years where, hey, they are team guys. You can ask so many people about them. You've got this larger sample size to understand because you compare that to, say, a Michael Trigg or a Chris Marshall, who crazy talented, obviously crazy talented. Neither one of them there is affecting Ole Miss in any ways that they could be harming. Because, look, Chris Marshall, you had to kick him off. You did it quickly. It is what it is. They obviously could use that wide receiver, but he's gone. And then with Michael Trigg, you could have let it linger. You could have said, hey, he's so talented, we're just going to keep trying. We're going to keep trying and keep trying. And I think Lane was probably going to do it at the beginning of the season, but he couldn't because Priestcorn was hurt, and they needed the tight end, they needed the body. But when they had the ability, Trigg's removed. Well, it's not just Trigg being removed. It's, hey, he can't impact other guys on the thing. He can't create locker room issues. He can't affect anybody else by doing that. And when that happens, you're looking at so many different levels and parts of roster building that I think that's what we're going to see when this thing comes for next year too. Because yeah, they do. They lose a ton of stuff on defense. They lose a ton. A lot of guys are gone on defense this year, but you've got some dudes back, and then you have the knowledge and the understanding that Lane and Golding did such a good job this year, putting that in good spots, finding guys that made sense, and there's nothing that says they can't somewhat duplicate that and implement that again. I think that's just sort of the system and the way that thing is playing out for them at this point. So no, I think it's a really good point for next year as you kind of look ahead. But I think that you have a proof of concept. That's kind of what I was looking for with Ole Miss and the way they rebuilt defensively that made so much sense that it's a little bit less of a concern than it would have been losing that many guys after last year into this year when you didn't have that proof of concept, you didn't kind of see the same thing, and you didn't know what you were getting into at that point. So I think that played a large role in that, and I think it'll play a large role into the next season as we get there. We got a lot of work to do first. Again, Georgia up next, ULM, and then Mississippi State after that. Again, Ole Miss 38-35. I haven't heard from Jeffrey, so I guess we'll be back in a second. But while we're waiting on that, I'll go through this a little bit because I meant to do it a second ago. Total yards, Ole Miss goes over 500, 518 against the number one total defense in the SEC. A&M 457. A&M runs for 152. Ole Miss runs for 131. Rushing TDs, 3 apiece there. Passing yards, Max Johnson goes 305. Jackson Dart goes 387. Yards per completion. This is pretty crazy. Ole Miss averaged 16 yards per catch today and got 134 yards after the catch today as well. So a huge day again for the Ole Miss wide receivers, mainly Trey Harris. That's who it was. It was Trey Harris. We can say anybody else, but that's who that was. Jeffrey, back with us. I'll get your screen back in. We've been all over the place, but I'll ask you, biggest regular season game next week for Ole Miss, assuming Georgia wins, since whom?
So it's either biggest regular season win or biggest regular season game since 2015 Arkansas, although I would still make the argument that everyone acts like if they just beat Arkansas that they were going to show up and play Mississippi State the same way that they did. Like, I've seen Hugh Freeze teams. That team would have been tight in Starkville that day. But it's either the biggest game since then or
they had
the
LSU
biggest
to go
game
that year too.
Yeah, and then or the biggest game since, I don't know, 03 LSU.
Okay, here's the thing. The opponent, the ranking, the record is the best since something in the 60s. Or Drew says 1990 Tennessee determined the SEC championships. Okay, we'll go there if you want to go there. It depends on what you believe to be the chances that Ole Miss has to get into the playoff if they win. That is the question of the question on, like, again, it's a huge game. I'm not in any way minimizing the sake of this game, and in the world of modern college football, because of everything else, Ole Miss going 11-1 would be a really freaking big deal. No matter what the outcome of that ends up being, no matter who they play on it, no matter what the bowl is, no matter who they play, any of that stuff. But to say it's the biggest since whatever, you have to legitimately believe that if they win out, they're going to play in the college football playoff. Because if not, then the odds are not very good that they're going to Atlanta, that they're going to represent the West. So while the record is huge and the opponent is huge, it's not playing for anything if you don't believe they're getting into the playoff. Does that make sense, Jeffrey? Because you're not playing for the West, you're not playing for the SEC. I mean, like, the stakes are what they are, but it's not the same if, hey, that team in LSU in 03, if they beat LSU, they were in. You know, if you beat Arkansas, you just got State and LSU and you're in 15. All those different things, you have to sit there and go, nope, we're going to go 11-1. There's going to be chaos, and we're going to end up in the top 4 in the country, and because of that, this is why this is the biggest game ever. I don't know. Up to you. Matt says 2014 Auburn was number 3 against number 4. Okay. Again, we can throw that in the pile if you want to. That's fine. It's just, that's where you have to decide. You can't simply look at it and go, oh, it's number 7 against number 2, so it's the biggest ever. No, it's got to, you've got to determine and decide that you have stakes on it to call it what you're wanting to call it. It's like Jeffrey fell out again. All good. No big deal. We'll get him back. Just having a little bit of internet deal there. You're back.
All right, so we're going hardwired now.
Okay.
No, you and I see this the same way. Like, on the one hand, wouldn't it be like perfect for Ole Miss's 11-1 season to be a year they still didn't go to Atlanta? And, like, you know what I mean? Like everyone can keep making their jokes. Like, on the one hand, like, that is, like, ironic and hilarious. I don't know. I mean, I think Ole Miss is now at the point where
it is peak college football, real quick, for, yes, like
correct.
The Arkansas team who went to Atlanta at 5-3 to talk crap to the 11-1 Ole Miss team. They won in Athens.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's okay.
Ole Miss has gone 7-1 and did not get into the SEC championship game. I believe Mississippi State's both appearances are 6-2. Like,
State
one might have been
one.
6-2. They did have 7.
No, they just have one
Yeah,
appearance, 98.
Yeah, and I think they were 6-2.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, we can do this. I think you just have to keep approaching it like the odds are stacked against you, but this kind of feels like a year where, I don't know, like, go 11-1 and see where the chips fall. Like, if you go 11-1 and you've got wins, wins over Georgia at Georgia, no one will have a better win than that, probably. I mean, I guess you could if Alabama finishes 11-1, maybe you can make the argument Texas has the bigger win, but literally no one has won at Georgia since 2018. We have 5 years where no one's won there. So how is anyone going to have a bigger win? And like it's you kind of do the thing. It's like you go 11-1 and see where the chips fall. I find it. I know, like when you play the scenarios out, it feels kind of daunting. I think if you go 11-1 and you got all those wins, I think you're getting in the playoff.
And your loss is at Alabama, who in this scenario is going 10-2 or 11-1, one or the other.
Correct.
Because Ole Miss has a hard time getting in either way. Alabama wins out and they're in, or Alabama loses to LSU tonight and they're 10-2, but they still LSU ends up in the playoff. I mean, in the championship game at that point.
Which, I mean, hey, but then that's kind of like, hey, we beat the team that, you know what I mean? Like then
you beat both SEC participants.
Correct. Like that kind of works in your favor. Like at a certain, and by the way, it's not like you beat them both at home. You would beat both, one at home and one on the road. And so, like maybe that kind of plays into your favor. Like it does kind of show like we probably need to get rid of the divisions sooner rather than later.
There's no doubt about that. I do think this is creating, I mean, under this hypothetical that we're discussing, is we are proving that next year is good in all ways. Get rid of the divisions, let the two best teams just play, because Ole Miss would be in really good shape at that point. And then, second, the 4-team playoff has a chance to really, really, really screw somebody right here.
Oh, yeah.
One way or the other. Because it's very possible that, under the scenario we're talking about, Georgia goes 11-1, loses to Ole Miss, but then beats LSU or Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they go over the other 11-1 team that beat them in Athens because they won the
Correct.
SEC.
Correct. I mean, it never made sense to have a 4-team playoff when at the time you had 5 power leagues. Like that never made sense. Like, so here we are, but I mean that's kind of the nature of the sport is. More times than not, the decision makers are going to make decisions that do not work for the best of the sport.
Yeah, Ashim Young has been off. I don't know if he's just not got put off the roster. He's been off the team for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it was that we reported that. I guess it was Vanderbilt last week. Multiple players were disciplined at that point for repeated issues, including some curfew stuff the night before, and Ashim is the one that we're 100% sure of is no longer with the program. So yes, the former Iowa State defensive back.
He didn't have a pro mindset.
Did not have a pro mindset. No, especially not last week. It appears. I mean, look, from a program standpoint, take out the playoff. Does 10-2 versus 11-1 matter? Does that elevate a program in any way? One game.
Yeah, I kind of think it does because to me, like the reason why I think it elevates the program is we can nitpick. Like, I can make fun of Hugh's 10-win season, but like we've seen multiple 10-win seasons. We've seen Cut have one. We've seen Hugh have one. We've seen Lane have one. We have not seen an 11-win season since integration. Like
no,
since SEC. Like
you've never.
Yeah, never. Like so.
Never.
Yeah,
look. It's a little bit of a crap stat because I get we've only been playing 12 games for a couple decades.
Sure.
Like I understand. If Lane Kiffin just beats ULM and beats Mississippi State, take the Georgia game out. He is the only coach in program history to win 10 regular season games, and he will have done it twice in a 3-year period.
Yes.
The stat is the stat.
Yes, and yet a significant part of this fan base still thinks like Hugh took them to highs that they've never been to.
Yeah, I mean, Lane's already eclipsed that because he's guaranteed
Correct.
a better season right now, no matter, frankly, what happens at this point, barring something crazy. And yeah, I mean, Larry Joe makes a good point. It's not just 11-1. It's 11-1 beating Georgia because I get it's just 1 week, but it's 1 week and it's 1 year that Walker Jones and all those guys and whatever, if this scenario that we're just hypothetically talking about happens, Ole Miss overtakes the college football world next week in a way that they've never have. Not where you beat Florida that day, not the same thing, Nothing like what
No,
will
because
happen
even
if you
the-
win. Yeah, no. Not
even
the
the
same
out-
as going into Athens and going, nope, we beat Georgia there. You're 9-1, whatever it is.
Well, even the day that they beat Alabama at home, like, that's an amazing day for fans that were in attendance. Like, that was an exorcism of demons, and that was like a day that everyone that was in attendance will never forget. The problem is, like, State came out as the number one team that weekend. Like, it wasn't like you would literally be doing something that hasn't been done in Athens in 5 years. You would be beating this team for the first time, since the SEC championship game in 2021. So we're talking about, I mean, I'm making the assumption that Georgia holds on here, but
yeah, sure.
Yes, you would be the single biggest story of college football next week. Unless
yes,
Missouri
I mean, if Missouri,
then,
I have a hard time liking Missouri anyway. Missouri knocks off Georgia, and like it just kills the whole damn narrative. And it's like, okay, this was a dud, in some way. But I mean, I still think Georgia's going to win the football game. I'm not okay with a world where Drinkwitz goes into Athens and wins. Sorry, I just can't.
I am with you. I will say,
This is worrying me the way it looks than I thought I would be.
I agree. I have more faith in Missouri making it, like, in the games where Georgia's kind of been shaky and wobbly. Like, Auburn, I never had any faith in that they were going to make a passing play. I do think Missouri can make enough plays in the pass game where I sit there and I will entertain. If we get to the third quarter and this is still a one-score game, I will not feel as good as I did that Georgia was going to beat Auburn as I would Georgia beating Missouri.
Yeah, Daniel Cotto, I appreciate it, fellas, but we're giving ourselves way too much hope right now. Now, look, the hope is the other side of this. Like I said, you go 10-2 without the win in Athens. Next week is a complete free shot. Just beat State. Don't do anything stupid down there. Win the game. Don't lay an egg in some point. And it's still 10-2, and it's the Cotton Bowl, or it's the Peach Bowl, or it's the Orange Bowl. That's a big
just
freaking
pray
deal.
that just pray it's 10-2 and it's not it's 10-2 and not against the G5 champion. Whatever that one, whatever the
Root for
Access Bowl
Tulane.
again.
Root for the Wave. Because you can't have a rematch.
So that you don't yeah.
What is Tulane's score, by the way? They were down to East Carolina early. Have they come back?
Let me check. I believe is that on the U or is that ESPN2?
I have no idea.
All right, ESPNU.
What is the update on Army and Air Force? Air Force was down big early. Have they started coming back against the Black Knights?
East Carolina is up 10-7 with 4:08 remaining in the first half. The Pirates have the football. Listen, I know y'all may not keep up with AAC football, but let me tell you what: dreams go to die in Greenville, North Carolina. That is that's one of the worst trips that you can possibly make. Let's see. It was 23-3 last I looked with Army and Air Force. So we really need. We're of course obviously rooting for the clock in that game. 23-3 with 5:50 remaining in the third quarter. Air Force has the ball at the 32 of Army. It's 1st and 10, and Larry A or whatever runs for 4.
Okay, and then
but back to your original point, like Walker Jones and the collective.
Mizzou is in the red zone, by the way.
Yeah, no, they're throwing it up 1-on-1, incomplete. Georgia's not covering him as well as I thought they would.
Yeah.
Which might mean those receivers are pretty good. It's more than just Lane Kiffin. It's more than just, the buy-in of the players and whatnot. Like, where Ole Miss deserves a lot of credit is they have actually, in my opinion, and I think it was going to take someone like Lane to do it. It was going to take someone that can kind of like, I think you almost need like the guy that plays hard to get. Like Hugh wanted to be lovey-dovey with all the money people and whatnot, but like there's kind of an element of like, we got to keep Lane happy. We got to keep Lane happy. And I don't know if this is a top 10 job right now, but if you look at the amount of money the collective has, if you look at what they're doing in terms of a job, they have elevated the Ole Miss job to a level that we've never seen before. or we've never seen since integration of SEC, or since, if you want to do expansion, but like the Ole Miss job right now, like, again, is it top 10 in NIL money? No, but it's like top 15, and this is the best the job's ever been. And I do think it took someone like Lane where you kind of have to be on your toes a little bit, like, we got to keep him happy, we got to keep him happy. And I give credit to all the Ole Miss people that have bought in, because that, to me, is the biggest story of why Ole Miss is where they are. Like, yeah, maybe they could have, with a little bit more money, they could have got Keon Coleman, but, like, I don't know, Trey Harris seemed to look pretty good today.
I mean, I saw earlier in the thing, they were asking Trey Harris or Laquan Treadwell. Well, Trey after Laquan got hurt.
Yeah, if it's pre-injury,
it's still
that's
Quan.
Different. Yeah.
I mean, I
don't know. I mean, I would say this, like, Trey's a better teammate.
Yeah. They've got a really good group. Like, that's the thing here that, again, it's back to the earlier question. They have a really good, especially on the offense, roster of guys who have bought in so well, because Dart is just a competitive MFer who he's taken control of the program in such a way that, I mean, frankly, you forget there was even the talk about any kind of quarterback stuff in the preseason at this point.
Well, like,
they've got the wide receivers who are bought. Yeah, go ahead.
Think about how you felt today, all the fans out there. Think about how you felt today when you thought he was hurt.
Not good.
I mean,
it didn't feel better for everybody because Spencer Sanders was on the sidelines.
Correct. You're especially because at that point he was in fuego.
Tupelo. My point was Watkins is fully bought in. He's a second-year guy, and then that entire, a lot of the offensive line is guys who have been around for a long time. It's not like the Corral, Sam Williams kind of leading the team, but there is some continuity that is very program first there, especially on that offensive side. Tupelo Reb, does anyone? No, sorry, wrong question. You had something else. Is there a strength of Ole Miss's offense that can force Georgia's defense back to a wall? I mean, we're seeing Missouri just win some one-on-ones on the outside and kind of throw on them a little bit. And if you do that, it is going to soften it up enough for you to run the football. I think Ole Miss has got to throw to run next week.
I mean, if you're going to beat Georgia, you are going to have to throw the ball down the field. Like, that's the same rules that applied for beating Alabama in the mid-2000s or mid-2010s. I don't know how we refer to it. The same rules that apply, which is you got to beat them vertically. Receivers are going to have to win one-on-one, and you got to get chunk plays. The same rules apply to Georgia. Like, if you look at Georgia's one loss is to Alabama in that SEC championship game. Why? Because Jamison Williamson had, like, I don't know, 300 yards, it felt like, on deep shots. Like, it wasn't necessarily Alabama just beat them down to down. It was they hit a bunch of deep shots, and that just changed the game.
4th and 11 for Missouri. You might be ahead of me, so they might have already kicked.
Yeah, it's field goal's good. It's 10-10.
Okay, 10-10. Georgia and Missouri. Georgia getting it back there in the first half. I was not aware of that. Jay Young with the super chat. He says the collective has stopped auto pays. Need to fix that. I was not aware of that. Yeah, look, from a collective standpoint, I was talking to somebody about this thing at the M Club thing on Thursday night. And this isn't just an Ole Miss problem, it's a national problem. It's not even all the money coming into the school, but it's what percentage goes to what sport and what's earmarked and how they have such a weird impact on each other, because Lane Kiffin throwing up a 10-2 or 11-1, the person impacted the most by that is Chris Beard.
Yes, agreed. 100%.
Because there's not money, I mean, you pick and choose and whatever. Whereas had Kiffin going 7-5, Chris Beard's rolling in it differently today. Totally different deal. Well, I mean, you ride the hot hand in the collective.
I bet Chris Beard would say he was finding it a lot easier in March than he is right now.
Yeah.
When there were people unhappy, you know what I mean? Like, hey, yeah, there were people unhappy with Lane, and I think rightfully so. Like, I don't want to make that seem like, I mean, I totally get getting irritated by the whole flirting with every job that comes open. No, I get it, but, like, hey, this is like I think I would make the argument, like, that's probably why Lane's a little bit better to maximize the Ole Miss job than probably anyone else, because part of the whole, like, we just want to hear him say he loves us. It's like, he's probably not going to say that. But at the same time, is that he might get the most and maximize the job the most because everyone's kind of like, well, we got to keep him happy.
I will say this. It wasn't an act. He was emotional after that game today. Like, getting the win, pulling it off. And that wasn't just hate Jimbo. I think it's everybody responding to the things that he's sort of been a parent about in a way, to the fan base. Hey, show up, get there, help, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of stuff. There's been some tough love back and forth between the two entities. And I thought, look, I'm not saying Lane's staying for 20 more years or anything. Don't get me wrong. But he is more comfortable here than he has ever been. And that was a very legitimate, emotional, thankful, kind of heartfelt Lane Kiffin there when that game ended.
Yeah, I'd make the point that twofold. One, I think he might have been feeling the same things that you and I were talking about that game, where it's like, he's seen a lot of football games in his life, and I bet he's seen a lot of times where that game goes against him, and he's probably getting a little emotional because, like, hey, like, the first thing he said, like, when he had the interview with Katie George is, this is a special group, like, it's a fun group to coach, and I would imagine part of that emotion is the fact that, like, he might have had some doubts that, hey, it's going to get done this time again. Like, at a certain point, like, you do start losing some coin flips, and this team doesn't lose those coin flips. And then I do totally think that you're right. Like, he's even admitted he's already stayed here longer probably than he ever thought. Like, again, I'm not sitting here going to go like, oh, this guy's never leaving. Like, I feel like, like that would just be so, like, misguided and naive to say that. But at the same time, like, I think even he acknowledges that Ole Miss has stepped up and even made this a better job than when he took it. I think he is aware of that as well.
You mean the ceiling has gone up higher than maybe he thought at the moment, the day
Correct.
he signed the contract or whatever.
Correct.
We're getting some crying over there. She have the over in Georgia, Missouri. Field goals are bad. We're trying to get touchdowns here, Jeff.
No, I laid 15.
Okay. I just heard the little one pipe up. I was trying to figure out what we were reacting to.
Oh, well, she's reacting to, we have the under in Army and Air Force, and we started with 20 points. Now, we're not dead yet. Like, we're on life support. We've got the paddles out. We've got the defibrillator. We have a very faint heartbeat. But yes, that is definitely what she's crying about. Like, we're at 26 and we have 32 and a half.
Auburn beating Vanderbilt 14-7, Doris says. Okay.
Everyone that tried to make that the game, I got next week circled.
Arkansas got a win today. Got feeling a little better about themselves. That plane ride back to Fayetteville will be a little nicer.
Still playing for bowl eligibility. That's the one I got circled. Can't you see it now? It's like 42 and raining in Fayetteville. It's a nice, like, little 3 o'clock SEC network game. That's where dreams go to die.
Let's talk about A&M for a second. Falls to 5-4.
Right.
The rest of their schedule: Mississippi State, Abilene Christian, and LSU. They'll get no points at all for beating State with that fan base because State sucks. Abilene Christian, that'll be not a full Kyle Field. And then that's in Baton Rouge. A&M has got to beat LSU in Baton Rouge to keep from going 7-5. And Jimbo, whatever his job situation is, he did literally nothing but harm it this season in 2023.
Yeah, you can make the argument, though. A big part of it, his quarterback did get hurt. And there's clearly a very big difference between Wegman and Max Johnson. Doesn't it also feel like, to me, like, a big part of the A&M story is what happens to LSU if LSU loses tonight? Like, I got them winning, but, like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I will be stunned if Alabama wins that game. Like, I just wouldn't be that way, but what happens to LSU when they don't have a whole lot to play for?
Third loss.
You know what I mean? Like, then all of a sudden it's 8-4. You beat LSU. Your fan base cares about that game. There's no question he has not maximized the job. Like, if we're talking about what Lane has done at Ole Miss, like, I think Lane has gotten the most out of the Ole Miss job that I've ever seen in my lifetime. Does that mean that there's not a little bit more they could get? Sure. Why not? Why not think that it can't keep going? Obviously, Jimbo's not done that with A&M. With that said, like, I just don't buy into this whole you're going to spend $70 million to fire him to go hire, like, Mike Elko. Like, I just don't buy into that. Like, I think that their natural instinct is they want to make it work with him. So if, like, they see a little bit of anything, they'll keep going. But I don't know. Like, at a certain point, maybe the A&M job is what the A&M job is. Like, they always recruit. They always recruit really well. They've always had money, and it feels like it's always just kind of an 8-4-ish type team, no matter how good. Like, you get Manziel that year, they go 10-2, but, like, other than that, they were 8-4, 9-3. Like, it's been basically the same program since they were in the Big 12.
Wesley, we're sure waiting on Neil. He will be there soon. He's back up in the press box after the press conference. Clearly, after a win like that, it took a little longer to get done. So he is getting a bit of content up, and then he will be with us here shortly at that point. Bama does not clinch the SEC West with a win tonight, but if they won tonight, Ole Miss would have to win out, and Alabama would have to lose to Kentucky and Auburn at that point. A win over Kentucky or Auburn would clinch. So, probably, yeah. That part is a technicality.
I would be stunned if they lost either of those games.
Does A&M's collective ever suffer, or do they just keep pouring more and more and more and more and more and more and beating their head against the wall? Like Jimbo, does he have the same revenue next year, even after another 7-5?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. What's the price of oil right now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably. I mean, it just has never seemed like it's ever been a question of do they have enough money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the problem that A&M has is, yes, they have lots of talent. The problem is, like, they're all kind of mercenaries. Like, I've never gotten the sense that the players that wind up at A&M, that's like, you know what their dream was? Their dream was to, like, gig them and to tell everyone howdy. Like, it seems to me there's a very different collection of people in this A&M stands versus on the football team. And so if you're not winning at the highest level, like, I think that there's a tendency to, like, have it fall apart quickly. We kind of see the same thing like at Auburn. Like, when it goes south on Auburn, it goes really south. And I think it's kind of the same type thing. It's like you end up getting a lot of mercenaries, and if it doesn't click, I mean, let's look at their losses, though. Like, they've lost to Miami, who is extremely talented roster. They lose at that one on the road. They lose to Ole Miss on the road in a 38-35 game. It was, another one-score game. They lose to Alabama in a game that was horribly mismanaged by Jimbo. And then what's the other loss? Tennessee.
A&M.
Oh, they lost to Tennessee.
Tennessee. Yeah.
They lost to Tennessee in Knoxville. Like, another. Like, I know it's fun to make fun of them. Like, I don't like anyone that wants to make fun of them. Like, enjoy college football the way you do. That's not a bad team. Like, that team is. I don't like. That's a pretty tough schedule.
But it's impossible to be bad with their talent. The point is, like, no, you're losing every coin flip. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is it like sure, but they're one of those teams too.
How many coin flips does Ole Miss win with their backup quarterback?
I mean, I get it. And I guess that's the thing. It's a multi-year sample size more than simply this relative season.
No, I get it. They look like A&M every year. I get that. But, like, let's also contextualize last year. Like, yes, last year they lose to App State, and it was hilarious. And they don't make a bowl game. They played 4 quarterbacks last year because of injury, not because of finding the right guy. like, I just think that if a lot of teams are going to struggle with those set of circumstances.
Yes, as mentioned in the stream, Iowa Northwestern opened at 29.5. It moved to 30 or 31 before close, and it is 0-0 at halftime right now between the Hawkeyes and the Wildcats there in Evanston, Illinois.
Has anyone got is that what's that on Big Ten alternate?
There's no doubt in your mind, like, I get the notoriety from it. The answer is Saban, but outside that, no doubt that if Lane could pick 3-0 against the coach, it's Jimbo, right?
Yeah,
and frankly, if he had to be 3-0 against one and 0-3 against the other, he would rather this than the other side.
Oh no, he'd take 3-0 versus Saban over 3-0 versus Jimbo. But if you're taking that out, yes, there's no one else.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because like part of it is like he views Jimbo doesn't maximize the job, and he does maximize his job. What channel's that Northwestern Iowa game on?
I mean,
I got to get a look. I got to get eyeballs.
Where is Iowa Northwestern, guys? Georgia
cannot. See this.
Georgia's going to punt with 52 seconds to go in the first half right now. Again, 10-10 Tigers.
Maybe this is FS2, maybe?
It's halftime right now, though.
Yeah, but so I need to know where this bad boy is.
You get time to get your popcorn. LSU, Alabama, is there a final thought on that? Peacock, Randy says.
Oh, it's on the cock. That explains it. I mean, to me, it's a question of can Alabama, like, does this game, where does this game settle in points-wise? If this game's in the 30s, I like LSU. If this game's in the 20s, I like Alabama.
Oh, dear God. Luke says the in-game over-under on Iowa Northwestern is 14.5.
Sounds like I need to go get a live under.
My God.
They didn't score. They scored 0 points in the first half. How are they scoring 2 touchdowns?
Plus.
Correct.
That's
plus
not
a
enough.
hook. Where's the cock? I got to find the cock.
14.5. That is unbelievable.
That is, let me tell you what, that's what NBC paid for. When they wanted Big Ten football, they wanted some Big Ten West. Just going at the half, nothing. Oh, there she blows. Oh, it's at Wrigley Field, too.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, look.
Oh, yeah.
Couple things there from the stream. One, I know that you guys probably feel like nobody ever misses a kick against you, but I swear I felt the entire time A&M was not going to make that kick. I did not expect overtime today. I thought that was a miss.
I agree.
I mean,
there's just something about. I also kind of like A&M played well. Ole Miss played better. Like, very rarely do you see like that kind of game where it's like usually kind of the ball bounces the way it's supposed to bounce.
Somebody says Iowa.
Like college football's a weird sport.
Northwestern 29 yards in the first half. I'm pulling up a box score because now I need details. Oklahoma State, by the way, is beating Oklahoma 17-14 with 3:28 to go in the second quarter currently. In that one second, let's get this up. And then a couple of you guys were mentioning more officiating questions. I thought all the catches were correct. I thought A&M caught that ball. Gaddy did not secure the interception prior to going out of bounds. I mean, tough break for Ole Miss, but he didn't catch it. The holdings, at least 2 of them were complete crap, including the one on Prieskorn that I don't even understand what he could have been looking at that point to throw a flag. He did not touch him. That defensive holding on Ole Miss was nothing because it's where A&M ended up with more penalty yards because they did a bunch of makeup calls, but the initial penalty hurt Ole Miss and was much more impactful than the makeup call simply reverted things back to that situation at the time. Like it was kind of uneven in those makeup calls at that point. But the issue is that there was nothing. I mean, while sometimes I kind of play into your conspiracy because I like it and it's kind of fun, the SEC needed Ole Miss to win that football game. They need Access Bowl members.
This is the way I would always describe it. I bet on Ole Miss. I didn't feel like I got screwed. Like I thought all the reviews, I thought they got the calls right. Like Like, part of the reason why Ole Miss leads the conference in penalties per game and penalty yards, they run more plays. Like,
Oh,
you know what? Pettis holds a lot. And you know what another problem is? The league knows that he holds a lot, and coaches, as we see now in this world of Michigan and snitch culture, coaches bitch and whine a lot. And they bitch and whine about Pettis to the league office that he holds a lot, and guess what they watch? It's not a conspiracy.
did not know that stat. Last 3 seasons, Ole Miss 7-2 against LSU, A&M, and Auburn. I guess it's true. I just didn't think about it and run it through like that. I don't remember the hold or whatever it was on Bentley's touchdown. I don't remember the first one. I don't think I ever saw it because it was. Look, you can get a penalty called being on the backside of the play. That doesn't keep you out of the penalty. But I don't remember. It was on James, but I don't remember.
I remember in live going, "That's a hold." Like, it's coming back. Like, I remember thinking live.
Somebody mentioned on the board that soccer does the thing where if you get offsides but don't impact, you don't participate in the play, you're not technically offsides. They don't call it. That is giving way too much responsibility to officiating to go, hey, it has to be involved in the play to call the penalty.
Guys, we're losing the plot here.
What?
Like, hey, look, let's think of all the ways that we could make officiating even more difficult and bring even more subjectivity into it. Like,
okay, you ready for these? Deacon Hill is the Iowa quarterback. I guess you were aware of that, right?
Yes, he is beautiful. He weighs about 285, and he throws maybe one of the ugliest footballs I've ever seen.
6 of 10 for 25 yards, averaging 2.5 per attempt. Their leading rusher does have 13 for 41. Okay, it's LaShawn Williams having a bit of a day. Hayden Large, 1 catch, 15 yards to lead the Iowa team. And for Northwestern, Brendan Sullivan, 4 for 8 for 15 yards. And Cam Porter, 6 for 23 yards. That is your offensive stat sheet for the Hawkeyes and the Wildcats today.
Do you got any yards per play there?
Probably can. Give me 1 second. I can probably come up with that. By the way, neither team is under 500 overall. They're both winning games.
No, both teams
to some extent.
I think both teams, I believe, still have a chance to win the West.
Is that true?
Oh yeah, I think they're both still alive. I mean, I think technically everyone is still alive in the West.
So 34 plays, 81 yards for Iowa.
So it's under 3 yards a play.
It's under 3 yards. And then, let's see, Northwestern, 8 plus 14, 22 plays, 29 yards.
Under 2 yards a play.
Yeah, 22 for 29.
But Iowa is doubling them up in yardage.
Okay. I mean, look, I think Iowa's going to win the football game. But
I'm taking the live under. I'm going to see if I can get it. What'd y'all say it was, 14.5?
14.5.
Based on everything that you just read, there is no way that game is going over, even if it's 14.5. Let's see, college football. Heck yeah. Let's see. It's only 14 on my book, but whatever. Under.
You still taking it?
Oh yeah. Listen, it's not like that hook was what I was really worried about.
Let's see. Yeah, that's where we are on that. Anything I missed from Florida, Arkansas earlier today?
Not really. I mean, Arkansas flipped the game early. Arkansas had a great start to the game where they went right down and scored, and then they got a defensive, like a strip set, they stripped the ball from a receiver and then ran it back to the house. Florida missed a kick to win the game in regulation. It's just kind of like a back and forth, kind of like sloppy 11 a.m. Like turnovers were kind of abound, but I don't know. Like it's like you could have put the jerseys on either team. The teams look the same.
It's a bad loss for Napier. He had sort of righted it enough, at least what direction felt like they were going, and that just completely annihilated it at that point. Just kind of nothing. What's our number 2 TV tonight? We got Alabama LSU, obviously, but people going out, people hanging in. What else are we watching?
I'm watching USC Washington. I'm looking forward to losing like my 7th bet on USC this year. I think there's one other good one tonight, isn't there? Well, like late night. I will be betting my Beavs after watching. That's the most Dion. My son's the quarterback move of all time, where like my son finally had a bad game, and I'm going to change the offensive coordinator to Pat Shurmur. Pat freaking Shurmur. Guy's never seen like a 2-yard hitch route that he never thought was open.
And removing the guy who you brought in, who was a head coach at the D1 level.
I mean, not only that, like Sean Lewis is a good that just is like the classic. Like my son's the quarterback, and he started to take a little criticism, so I'm gonna flip that. I mean, I made 21 bets this weekend, so I've got. I also bet on. After I saw Ryan Walters like started whining and complaining about Michigan, I bet Michigan tonight. I mean, I'll watch State Kentucky on like a auxiliary TV. You know what I mean? Like, is State going to stay alive for a bowl game? Like, I know that's your favorite stat in all sports. Is State going to keep their bowl streak alive?
Yeah. What's their APR this year? Are they okay at 5, or do they need 6?
I think they did away with the 5 and 7.
Oh, really? Is that over? We just don't feel it.
Yeah,
now?
I think now because like there's enough like G5 teams that have 6 wins. I think they did away with that.
Jeremy says Jackson Dart was putting out videos saying money doesn't win you ball games after the game. It's fair.
I mean, let's not act like the Ole Miss roster's poor. like, come on, y'all. Let's have a little context.
I mean, not the little engine that could at this point.
Just I mean, like, you know, this is like the Cardinals like calling out like you know, yeah, we got $120 million payroll, but like we're not the Dodgers. It's like, yeah, we're not poor. Come on.
I was looking again, and they don't play next season. Ole Miss does not play A&M next year. So no A&M, no Alabama, no Auburn for Ole Miss next year.
No A&M, no Alabama, no Auburn.
Yeah, Ole Miss's conference teams at Arkansas, at Florida, at LSU, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, at South Carolina.
I mean, I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, the biggest question is, are they gonna move to 9 next year?
Well, they're not for next year for sure. It's 2025 that it might or may not happen.
That can always, if ESPN calls and says they want that 9th game,
do whatever it is they tell you at that moment.
I mean, remember when they told us they couldn't change the schedule, and then COVID happened and they announced a new 10-game schedule in like a month? It's amazing what they can and can't do.
Yeah, it doesn't take a long time necessarily, does it?
Correct. Now, I suspect that you're correct because of the bye games and whatnot, but I would be surprised.
I would assume Neil will be here soon. Last couple of things. I mean, outside of Missouri shocking you, what is sort of just your early 2 or 3 minute take on this Ole Miss Georgia thing for next week?
How does Ole Miss handle a very physical defense that plays a lot of man? I mean, they're going to basically play similarly to what Alabama did to you. Now, I think Alabama's defensive front's better than Georgia's, but you know, are they going to be able to? How does Ole Miss move the football? You know, do they make enough plays in the passing game to keep it interesting? And then, you know, can Ole Miss stop the run? Georgia's not been a great running team. It's probably going to be the best quarterback you've seen all year. I don't know. I mean, what? I think the line will be pretty, like, what? It'll probably be 14.5, 15. I bet it'll be similar to the Missouri line.
Maybe even a touch or two lower. It wouldn't shock me if you got like a 12.
I think Ole Miss and Missouri power rate pretty similarly. Like, we can disagree whether we think that's right, but I think, like, power ratings wise, I think they're pretty similar.
I guess I'm saying with this game, unless Georgia blows them out in the second half like crazy, with it being competitive and close, it might inch that line down just from a perception standpoint. Because somebody the week before goes, oh well, Missouri's within whatever, and that means Ole Miss. You know what I mean? You're trying to get 50 on both sides, so you could play that down a little bit. I'll guess 13, something like that. I think is probably where I would be with that.
Yeah, I mean the second half matters to you.
Last thing, and I will let you go. Somebody asked, Grizzlies update. They gonna sell? What are they doing?
I mean, the problem is, like, you can't just say, like, we're tanking on the season, because, like, that sends a horrible message to Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, and Ja Morant. Like, yeah, part of the reason you're in the problem that you're in is Ja Morant. The biggest problem that the Grizzlies have is they have let way more good players leave than they've brought in. Like, I think the Marcus Smart thing's going to work once they get him off the ball. But, like, you know, they shouldn't have let Kyle Anderson go. They should not have let DeAnthony Melton go. Like, in the end, like, Dylan was going to leave because of the money. Like, that's fine. And, like, gets rid of the headache. But, like, they've been horrible in the last two drafts. They tried to go smartest men in the room, taking, like, Jake LaRavia and David Roddy. So they're kind of paying for their sins of they thought they were better at evaluating talent than they are. And this team kind of, it stinks right now. Like, the back end of their roster is like a G League team. And that's why they're sitting there playing last night in Portland like it's game 7 of a playoff series and they're still losing.
It kind of takes the juice out of the city in general, doesn't it? I mean, like, it's kind of what the thing you had to, like, whatever. And I mean, you're just like, ugh.
Everything is, Memphis sports right now is very boring. Like, there's just no buzz, anything.
I mean, hate you have 5 hours of radio to kill doing that.
Yeah, it's also awesome when, like, that's your, like, livelihood.
Yeah. Appreciate it, bud. Give me a lot of time.
All right, guys.
Talk soon. Jeffrey Wright there joining us again. Neil will be here soon. What are you drinking? What's going on in the stream? Where are you hanging out? Kind of give me some update. Anybody out in town? I mean, I'm getting texts that it's quite busy. Quite the scene there downtown in Oxford after 38-35 win over Texas A&M. So, kind of get me back on the screen here. We'll hang out, wait on Mr. McCready to join us, which should be a few minutes. I was looking. Story is in the admin. Looks like he's in the editing process of getting that up right now as the press conference ran pretty long. The only thing that I know for sure Lane had said was he confirmed that Isham Young is off the team at this point. I did see that. So, let's see. Yeah, I did not see Ross today. As soon as I walked into the press box, I heard somebody say they had seen him earlier in the day. But I did not run into AD Bjork at this point. Larry Jokes came back from Branson. A lot of old people driving, really scary. Candler, Bullet, and Sprite from Rhode Island, which when I was in Oxford. Okay, yeah. I will take a second. Really somber note today. It's a good time to do it. I hate that I'm having to do it, period. But with Neil still not on with us, former Ole Miss basketball player Aaron Harper passed away last night. He was a member of the Provine Posse from back in the Rod Barnes days. He came in with Justin Reed and David Sanders, and just really tragic that we've lost two of those men so early in their lives. Justin Reed passing away a couple years ago, or I guess a few years ago now, and then Aaron Harper. He was in town for an alumni event and had a car wreck last night and this morning. So thoughts and prayers with tons of people there. It's just a really tragic situation. It's a terrible thing. I know people I saw had talked to him just before that happened, and he did pass away in a car wreck. So just again, all thoughts for the Harper family. I saw Ramiro had a pic with him from that event last night. It's just a kind of it's a really tragic day in Oxford in that regard. Neil is logged in. He's not in the screen, so I'm guessing he went to get a water or something. So I'll let him come back before we start talking. But yeah, really, really tragic. Sometime late last night, early this morning. I'm not sure exactly when, but I know after the event that was on the square in Oxford that did happen. There's postrebelgrove.com, people talking about it there. Obviously, sending condolences at this point for that. Playoff picture, who do you cheer for? All the Pac-12 teams to lose as many games as humanly possible. You're cheering for Oklahoma State today because you would need Oklahoma State. You need Oklahoma to lose, and maybe Oklahoma to beat Texas or something, or however that would work. Yeah, so something along those lines. Again, it's just chaos. I mean, it's still early. It's only November 4th. There's lots of games left, and as you're watching on the screen right now, I mean, again, it could be a bit of a dud situation. Neil, we're always making fun of Missouri. We take our time doing that very often. They found a way to win in Athens today, and it sort of takes some of the punchline off of that, doesn't it? Can you hear me?
Oh, are you talking to me, Chase?
I was talking to you. Yes. No, you're good.
Oh, sorry.
I was saying if Missouri wins in Athens today, they're kind of like ruining the week a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this for a while. Missouri's good, and they present some matchup issues for Georgia. I haven't seen any of it. I just know it was 10-10 at the half.
The interesting thing that is happening in that game is that they are really hitting a lot of one-on-ones in the passing game. They're throwing the ball to the outside very effectively. It's probably something that Ole Miss would be very, very fond of seeing at this point. That they could do something somewhere with. I mean, it's been kind of eye-opening the way they have been able to move the football a little bit through the air.
Yeah, I'm searching for it. Have they started third quarter yet?
Just starting now or in a second.
Okay.
So I guess obvious stuff here to start. Just kind of take me through it. Press conference, Lane, whatever.
I think Lane was more relieved than he was anything. He was pretty funny. He talked about how on the interception that got overruled that he saw the ball moving, but he was trying to sell the replay officials by acting super confident, which was kind of fun. He had really high praise for Jackson Dart. It's a story I'm still working on. I threw a column up just then. I'm still working on a story about Jackson because I thought this was his best game. Jackson said as much later too. He just talked about their resilience. The word that he used and kind of the phrase that I used was cardiac kids. This is the fourth time this season that Ole Miss has either trailed or been tied going into at some point in the fourth quarter. Tulane, they were tied going into the fourth quarter, and then they trailed, LSU, Arkansas, and now today Texas A&M in the fourth quarter, and they've come back and won those games. He called them the cardiac kids, which is probably pretty fitting. But I think beyond that, they are a. I always hate using the word resilient because you wrote that in your book, and so it feels like I'm talking about a baseball team. But I think this football team is turning out to be a really resilient group. I don't know that they're the most talented team. I don't think they were the most talented team today necessarily, but they're just resilient as hell. They're just very, very gutsy, and they do it week after week. And it's the end of my column, but Quinshon Judkins was talking about they're not complacent. They're not here to win a certain number of games or just make it to a bowl game. Their whole objective is to win the whole thing. And look, they'll have to have a lot of help, but we're going into November what's today, the 4th, or November the 11th. They're heading to Athens, Georgia with, I mean, that's still on the table for them. I mean, they don't control their own destiny because they lost in Tuscaloosa, but 8-1, 5-1. I mean, it's really remarkable stuff when you think about it.
Obviously, we're seeing stuff on TV, but what was the reaction from Dart and the team and just everything else when that field goal? It was blocked. Xavier Harris did get a hand on that. I think was the official ruling that they made there. Also, Jeffrey and I both agreed, for whatever reason, I thought he was going to miss that kick. I did not think there was overtime. I was already kind of setting up for whatever reason. I typically just think everybody's going to make every kick. I kind of do that mentally, but something about the way that drive sort of unfolded with Ole Miss should have had the pick with Washington or had a chance at it, and then Gaddy bobbling it. Just thought, yeah, sometimes you just kind of have to make a play to deserve it. And I thought, the kick's probably going to go wide here or something.
I figured he'd probably make it. I figured we were heading to overtime, and I was regretting my decision to come down to the field because once you get down to the field, you can't see the game anywhere near as well as you can from the press box. And I was actually contemplating, if this goes to overtime, do I go back up and then come back down? Because I would have had time. But I mean, I thought they did and Lane talked about this too. They did a pretty good job in at least forcing it to be a long kick. 47 yards is not a gimme. People miss 47-yarders all the time. Kid for Florida, missed a 44-yarder at the end of regulation that would have won it for them today. But so, it wasn't a chip shot. And so, yeah, I mean, look, they got kind of torn up defensively in the second half. Ended up giving up, 480 some odd yards or whatever. But again, it was kind of like the LSU game where you just needed to get a stop, and they did. They got a stop. I mean, that's just kind of how you define this team. It wasn't a dominant performance in the second half by any stretch of the imagination, but when they needed a score, they got it, and when they needed a stop, they got it.
They're a team that twice today, from an offensive standpoint, you go down and you put a drive after the 14-point swing off the blocked field goal, run back for a touchdown, and then obviously when they absolutely had to have it, they're late when they lose the lead for the first time and they get the ball back. And Dart again today, he throws for 387, throws for a couple scores. He had a couple runs that did something, even though they really kind of kept him out of the run game with the way A&M's front seven is. It wouldn't have made a lot of sense today. But season left to go, his toughness, his ability to just sort of go win games, he's creating a hell of a legacy right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Missouri down inside the 20. Yeah, he just makes plays, man. I mean, earlier in the year he made plays with his feet. I don't think he's completely healthy. He only ran 3 times today. I think got 8 yards total, and he made plays with his arm today. He wasn't super mobile in the pocket, just was super accurate. Spread the ball. Obviously, Trey Harris, they felt like they had a mismatch there. It turns out they were right. He was spectacular. But I guess I've got the box in front of me. Let's see. I thought as it was happening, I thought
Harris
he was kind of spreading
change.
the ball around a little bit. Yeah, I mean, but Watkins caught 7 balls. Wade caught 6. He threw it to Prescorn. 3 other guys had a catch. He was just 24 for 33, 387, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Only got sacked 1 time against the defense that led the SEC in sacks. Offensively, I just thought they had a really good game. Maybe one of their better games.
Did you get any idea of what happened in the second half defensively, what A&M did? Would anybody have any clues to kind of what that looked like or what caused it?
He just said nothing changed. They just made plays. He gave credit, he being Lane, gave credit to Max Johnson and credit to Texas A&M. I mean, I'm sure they made some adjustments. I haven't read anything that the A&M people have written or whatnot, but I mean, they made some big time plays in that half that kept drives alive for them. A couple of big catches, and I thought Johnson he was pretty gritty. I mean, I thought both quarterbacks were pretty gritty. His final numbers are pretty solid: 31 for 42, 305, 1-1. That's a pretty solid day.
Injury-wise, anything we were aware of? It looked like Ukwu came back, I thought, there at the end.
Yeah, Ukwu came back. Jared Ivey got hurt late, so I don't know what that was. It looked like shoulder, collarbone kind of thing, but I don't know what that was. Obviously, that would be a big loss. I didn't see anything else.
We're not far away from this being true danger zone here for the Bulldogs a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, they just made a big play right there to force a field goal attempt from the big guy. This league has some really good kickers, by the way.
It does.
Like, this kid's a really good kicker. He crushed that. 13-10.
We're going to spend all week on this because it's what we do. We're going to talk about Georgia all week over and over and over again and what the context around this in a number of different ways. But just first blush, and I'm not asking you to be an Ole Miss historian, but is this a bigger game than a game that would, pave the way for winning a West or a conference title?
Oh, that's a good question. I remember covering the LSU game up here in 2003, and that felt like this monumental big game, right? Because if you won, you went to Atlanta and all that stuff, and it was Eli's final home game and all of that. But that team had already lost twice. Twice. So, they weren't going to be in the title race. So, yeah, you had a chance to win a conference title, and that team probably would have won the conference title, and it would have gone to the Sugar Bowl, and it would have checked a lot of Ole Miss boxes. Since I've been on the beat, I mean, you go back, I guess, to that 2015 season, and you talk about certain games being really big, but the Arkansas loss happened in October, if I recall correctly, or early November. There were still a lot of games left. And then after that, they won, but they weren't playing for a national title. I mean, a win, Chase, over Georgia, again, all you have left at that point is ULM and Mississippi State. You'd have to have some help, but there'd be a conversation to be had depending on what happens in some other games. And, now this is where a narrative I'm kind of shaping in my mind a little bit. I still think it's a bit of a free shot. I mean, if you lose, sure, it's disappointing, but 10-2 is going to get you in an Access Bowl. And when you went into a season where most people were talking about 8-4, 7-5, the over/under was 7.5. I mean, I think 10 wins in an Access Bowl, it's really difficult to go, oh, well, that was.
You're a win over Mississippi State from going to the Peach, the Cotton, or the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, and I just have a hard time, doing any of that's disappointing stuff with that. So I think that's what makes it such a free shot is, you're on the road against a Georgia team that as of this moment has won 25 straight games. Is it 25?
Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
41 of their last 42, 2 national titles. It's in Athens where they haven't lost since 2018 as of this moment. Missouri's trying to do something about that, but as of this moment, that's the case. So I think you get to go over there and play super loose and just let it all hang out and see what happens. There's not a lot to lose, really. And even if you win, right? I mean, the whole, we're trying to get to Atlanta thing. Well, you got to have Alabama lose twice. So
Atlanta is basically out, barring Vanderbilt going on a run.
Yeah, or
all kind of chaos happening. Sure.
Well, I mean, I lost LSU tonight, and I mean, I've covered the Iron Bowl where it got weird. I mean, I have. Usually, the best team wins the Iron Bowl, but I have covered an Iron Bowl where Alabama went to Auburn as a prohibitive underdog and blew Auburn out, and I have covered an Iron Bowl where Auburn went to Tuscaloosa as an underdog and just whipped them on a day when it was so freaking cold. That's the one thing I do remember is just being like ice, and it was like their tradition to keep the press box open, and you're like, oh, for the love of God, it's 10 degrees.
Hugh can send the Rebels to Atlanta.
Wow, I mean, I will tell you that I have sat around a couple of times and thought the irony of a Hugh Freeze Auburn team in the fourth quarter against Alabama, where all Ole Miss people are suddenly having to really cheer for the former coach, is pretty thick. I mean, that story writes itself. But I don't know. I mean, it's so I think, and you can talk me out of this over the course of the week. I think it becomes that deal where if you win, it's one of the biggest wins in the program's history, probably the biggest win in modern history. I don't know enough about the history, but
I
I'm
mean,
having a hard time.
again, in 1990, they lost to Tennessee in a game that would have won the SEC had they won it.
Yeah, the game
Okay.
in Memphis.
Yeah,
That was a big game.
yeah,
But that game
03.
didn't have national title ramifications, I don't think.
No, not at all. No, no.
I mean,
That's
that's
what I'm
the
saying.
thing. That's the
You
thing.
win, you go, whoa, no, this is.
You win and you're in the conversation. You got to have some help, but you're in the conversation.
But
Big
shit
time.
happens always.
Always. Always.
I mean, it just does. Yeah, what is Auburn Vandy right now? Oh, by the way, did you see your Iowa and Northwestern boys were 0-0 at the half?
Yeah, Iowa just scored a touchdown. They're up 7 now. It's an insurmountable deficit. The under on that was going to hit. The under on 30.5. Unbelievable.
Well, no, it wasn't just that. You missed me and Jeffrey talking about it. The live over-under at halftime was 14
Yeah.
and a half. It's 14 and a half.
Funny. That's funny. I mean,
Look, I think Georgia
Carson-
wins this game, but
it's getting kind of squirrely, man.
it really is. Auburn 17-7 right now is what we're doing with.
Is that right?
Yeah, Jimbo is an LSU loss from 7-5.
Yeah, and they came back and played a pretty good.
They played
second
pretty
half.
well, frankly. Played
But
pretty
if
well.
they don't, if the touchdown doesn't get overruled and it's 21-0, this thing might be a blowout. And that team looks way too good to ever get blown out. That team looks too good to have 4 losses. I mean, physically, they looked the part. Like when you watch them in warmups, and Jackson Dart said that, he goes, they definitely won the pregame beauty pageant. I mean, they look.
Oh, he
like
said that?
Yeah. I mean, they look like a legit team, and that's 4 losses.
It'd be 5 after getting no bowl last year.
Who else do they have? Because he's going to have a hard time keeping.
They
their
have State
focus.
next week. I just don't think State can score enough. I don't know where it's at. I would assume College Station.
Yeah, I would assume State can't beat that team.
Yeah, Air Force is probably going down. Tulane is it a nail biter with East Carolina right now? You don't just walk into the jungle in Greenville and make stuff happen. You gotta tough your way through that. We haven't hit it. What's Michael Pratt's value on the open market?
I would think he'll have at least 50 offers within 10 minutes. Yeah. I mean, I would think he already has offers.
Yeah, he has some idea where he may or may not be headed at this point.
He probably has a clue as to what his value is.
Yeah, Georgia facing a big third down, and then the officials fire a flag in there.
The officials have had a day.
Oh, they've had a day.
They've had a day. They had a day.
They botched
here.
so many holding calls. I do think they got all the catches right, but oh boy.
I thought the hold on Jeremy James was shaky at best.
And the one on Priestcorn, there wasn't anybody within 10 yards of him.
I don't know what in the world that was. I thought they got the one right on Pettis. I do think at the end, I couldn't tell, but I was looking at the stadium replay, and it sort of looked like the kid for A&M, that was a catch. And it was initially ruled an incomplete pass. I think they got it right. And Lane said that Lane and Alex Collins was saying it on the sideline. Lane said it in the press conference that the ball was moving. So they got that reversal right. But they've had a day. Apparently in the Florida game, they missed what should have been a 10-second runoff in the end of the game, and Florida got a chance to kick the game winner and missed it. That would have been
Oh,
that would have been, something people would have talked about, even though no one's talking about those teams. Georgia just scored.
Georgia just scored?
Yeah.
Okay. 17-13 then there.
So 17, pending the PAT, it's 16-13. PAT will make it 17-13 with like 8 minutes to go in the third.
Okay. Keep eyes on that one, as clearly for the fun of the week. I'd like Georgia to be undefeated. That would be.
So we're assuming if Georgia wins, it's a 2:30 game. If Missouri wins, it's a night game.
You're better with me about like CBS's ability to take those or not take those, or
I
what they have
don't
left
think
or anything else.
Everything I hear is that rule is a rule that's sort of written in pencil. It's more of an understanding than it is a rule.
Yeah, I thought the A&M catch at the goal line was a catch. I know the tip of the ball probably hit the ground, but it can as long as it doesn't aid the catch. Now, your thing is we didn't get a great view, and they ruled it incomplete. So if you want to say stands, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But I did think just picking it that he caught the football.
So what I don't understand about that rule, and I'm not saying he missed the call or got it right. I don't know. I couldn't tell. I agree with your assessment that the ground didn't allow him to make the catch. But is it on a touchdown where you have to finish the catch? If it's not a touchdown, you don't have to finish the catch?
Yeah, they basically they said that he caught it, got his feet down, made a football move by rolling over, and then the ball came out. Like after he was already down, and since if it's in the pros, he probably fumbles because nobody touched him.
Okay.
But in college, they said it was over at that point.
Okay.
But yes, in the end zone, you've got to basically take it to the locker room with you.
Yeah. It was a hell of a throw and catch. They held A&M to like 5 return yards total.
Ladarius Tennyson was huge today in the return game for Ole Miss.
He may have earned. We were sitting next to a pretty high profile NFL executive. He may have earned himself, if nothing else, a camp invite as a special teams player. Those were some big plays.
Did he say he was doing 3 games today?
Yeah, he was going to state for a minute and then racing over to Tuscaloosa for the second half of that. I think he was going to state for pregame just to look at some guys.
Oh. I guess that makes sense. I heard him mention something about how you at least get some live eyes or whatever his statement was that he made.
I think he was heading to Starkville to get down on the field for pregame to put eyes on actual people, not just people on screens.
Trey Washington led Ole Miss 10 tackles. Saunders had 8. Saunders a couple huge plays there to halt A&M drives during the course of this game. And then Xavier Harris, he blocks the field goal and has 7 tackles for the Rebels. Showing a little there for him. They only got to Johnson one time, 1 sack. That was Cedric Johnson there late on what easily could have ended the game right there because it was a ball on the ground that A&M covered up on that last possession.
Chris Graves played a lot when Zamari Walton got hurt. Walton came back into the game, by the way.
Okay, so he's
okay. I mean, that was a really physical game. I would assume tomorrow is a pretty sore day for guys walking into the Manning Center. But yeah, I would suspect he's okay to play.
I guess final couple things. Anything other than relief from Lane? I mean, what was sort of your other impressions of him?
I mean, he was relieved. He was happy. He's proud of this team. He likes this team. I think he wishes they could win a few more comfortably, but I think that's just kind of who this team is at this point. He was super pleased with Jackson Dart. He was pleased with the offensive line. He's not going to trash talk Georgia this week. I can assure you.
He's not going to talk about collectives on Monday, you don't think?
I wouldn't think. I think he's going to be on his very best behavior.
Chris Graves is the cornerback that transferred from Miami really late in the process, was a wide receiver that converted to corner for the Hurricanes. Still very raw, but very athletic, very long.
Yeah, long, athletic, quick. A&M kind of tried to pick on him a little bit. He was involved on that pick play that got the OPI, got it reversed.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, no, it'll be a bit of a Lane Kirby love fest, I would assume, as the week goes on.
Yeah,
Kirby
I
will
would
say
think
nice
so.
things. Lane will say nice things.
Yeah, and I would suspect that's pretty genuine. I mean, they've certainly gone against each other plenty on practice fields. I mean, they've both come from the
Lane gets
same
a
tree.
couple really good weeks because he gets this free shot in Athens, and then it's ULM. So, like, I mean, until Thanksgiving night, he's kind of just borrowed money no matter what. Like, it's all right.
I mean,
He gets beat 38-10 on Saturday, and he shrugs his shoulders and goes, "I don't know, best team in the country."
yeah,
Cool.
it's easy, and I don't think they'll get whipped like that. I don't think. I mean,
I don't either.
I would certainly pick Georgia because duh. But man, you get to go over there and let it all hang out. Why not? Right? I mean, just give it your shot. And like you said, if you don't get it, you have 12 days to recover.
I think
You get a chance
Drinkwitz would agree with all the Ole Miss fans about the officiating right now. He looks very non-pleased there in Athens. He's very frustrated. Body language is not good.
They're running the ball a little bit. I mean, they're doing some things.
Yeah, they're okay. They're good.
No, they're good. He's done a good job. He's changed the trajectory of that program. I mean, they were really close last year to 8-9 wins.
Much different show than it could have been there late. Again, Ole Miss falls behind. Ole Miss takes the handshake. Did you see the pregame handshake where he did not? He acted like he didn't see Lane. Did you see this?
No.
All right, so Lane goes and finds him basically, and you can see Jimbo see Lane out of the corner of his eye, and he turns the other direction and starts really talking to the manager, and like kind of turns his back to him. And it's really awkward because Lane is just standing there behind him for like 10 seconds, kind of going, really? Okay, like, sweet, I'm just going to keep standing here. And then finally he like taps Jimbo on the shoulder, and Jimbo does the, oh man, I didn't see you there, and like tries to give him the handshake, and it's like, oh, okay, sure.
Oh my God.
Gotcha.
I just don't understand him. I've known Jimbo a long time. I don't know why he's suddenly so ultra sensitive, but he was really sensitive this week. I mean, the Gilbo piece and Outkick very clearly felt like a phone call had been made.
Mm-hmm. Real Gear Online, yeah, I think Ole Miss gets worse calls than Blue Bloods. The question is, like, purposefully or because of reputation or because they're assuming things. Like, there's so many different human nature parts of it. But, I mean, yeah, sure. Alabama gets calls in Tuscaloosa.
I mean, if you go down the purposefully lane very far, you get into an area where, well, then what's the point in even watching it? What's the point of even following it? Because if it's fixed, and if you believe it's fixed, it's just one hell of a conspiracy.
There was also zero reason for anyone to want A&M to win today.
No, I mean, if you were fixing the game today, you'd want Ole Miss to win. It's another top 10 team.
Mm-hmm. You get that huge game next week. You get Access Bowl. You get all that stuff.
It's more money.
Mm-hmm.
A&M at 3 losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to an Access Bowl at 9-3. No, I mean, if anything, you want, if you're the SEC, you want Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama to win today.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. So we get the week we were looking for. We said let them get past A&M, and then we'll have the conversation. So we're firmly in that camp now as we move forward for what I guess, again, 6-day window, guys. So it'll be tomorrow when you get your time, not Monday. They'll let you know.
It'll probably leak out late tonight.
Okay.
But yeah, tomorrow, whatever.
2:30 makes the most sense. But either way, Ole Miss Georgia next week, huge game. No matter what happens in front of our TVs right now. Georgia currently getting the ball back up 17-13 with 6:11 to go in the third quarter there in Athens, facing the Tigers. We get done. Again, thanks to Dead Soxy. Elevate your game day look with socks that financially support the Rebels. Every step you take shapes the future of Ole Miss sports. Rock a sock subscription. Get the exclusive Juice Kiffin sock for free. DeadSoxy.com. Subscription to receive the latest in Ole Miss styles every month. are an interval that best suits you. Upgrade your socks. Elevate Ole Miss. As always, stay Soxy. Appreciate them. Jeffrey gave me a ton of time. Really appreciate his time as well. Content up at Rebel Grove. More coming as well. You guys enjoy your night. Stay safe. As what is, I'm getting text again, is a pretty raucous environment downtown, apparently, according to folks. Waiting the mosh pit would seem to be an exercise in patience at this point. So, anyway, good luck to everybody. Enjoy your night. Back with a full slate of MPW Digital podcasts, as always, presented by Twisted Tea. And we will talk to you again very soon.